Well, the biggest games of the year call for the biggest episode of the year. Mitch, are you ready for coaches' interviews, expert analysis, all the good stuff heading into the state championship preview?
Yeah, every week, every play has come down to this. So the campaign for Champaign has reached its final stop, and let's get into it here.
Talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome back to View from the West podcast. I'm your host, Ric Armstrong, joined as always by Mitch Stormer. And Mitch, the campaign for Champaign, did you make that up on the spot? That's genius.
No, I wish I did. Those were on our playoff shirts back in the day. So I'm sure it's used around the state. It's a pretty catchy tagline now that they're back in Champaign. So I'm sure that won't be the only time you see it. But yeah, I can't take credit for that.
Well, Mitch, you're supposed to just say, yeah, I made that up right on the spot. I'm so smart that's what happens, you know?
Yeah, I wish I did. Somebody much smarter than me and more creative than me did that.
So Mitch, we've been driving all year. We've been building up to this. It's state championship week. Here we go. Lena-Winslow back in the Class 1A state title game against Camp Point Central. And I mentioned in the open, this is our biggest episode of the year. We're going to hear from both head coaches, from Ric Arand from Lena-Winslow. We hear from head coach Brad Dixon from Camp Point Central. But we also are bringing in area experts. We're bringing in Kyle Kampmeyer from NUICfootball.com. We're also bringing in Matt Schuckman from MuddyRiverSports.com. They have all the information on Camp Point Central and from Lena-Winslow. So Mitch, I mean, are you and I going to need to say anything in the end of the show here?
No, I'm going to watch the end of Monday Night Football here and let the experts do all the talking. So looking forward to hearing what they have to say, and I'll take their word for it. That's for sure.
All right. Well, before we jump into all that, let's hear from the coaches who walked the sidelines. And then following that, we'll jump right in and we'll talk, break down, analyze the game, the Class 1A game, and then we'll get into some bracket talk from 2A on up through the rest of the field. So let's get right into it. Well, I'm joined now by the head coach of the Lena-Winslow Panthers, Ric Arand. The top-seeded Panthers set a perfect 13-0 record. Coach, if you're talking to me this time of year, it means you're doing something right. We've talked the past several years, so I guess that's a good thing, huh?
Yeah, I always look forward to seeing you this time of year.
Well, Coach,
there's been a lot of years where you ignore me.
Well, no, that's not. I don't know if that's true. Well, there's no reason. You've given us no reason to ignore you since about 2010. And that kind of leads into my first question. What impresses me most about this program is just the consistency, right? 5 state titles since 2010, 24-2 playoff records since 2016. What is it about this program that you guys keep it at a high level year in and year out?
Yeah, I don't know how high a level we're at all the time, but I think we just try to remain consistent. I think probably the biggest factor involved with that has been 2 things. I think number one, our strength and speed program over the past 10 to 12 to 15 years has been constantly evolving. I think we try to get better in that every year. And I think we've managed to do that. I think we've managed to stay kind of ahead of the norm. Our kids know what's expected of them. We have very few kids that ever miss a strength and speed day workout. When they do miss, they want to make sure they make them up. We bribe them with real expensive gifts like a crappy $5 T-shirt and stuff like that. So, they want to make sure they miss that 6 a.m. or they make up that 6 a.m. workout so they get that T-shirt, at the end of the summer. And then I think the second thing, and not necessarily in either order, 1 or 2, but I think just the stability and consistency of our coaching staff, it has basically remained the same for the last 20 plus years. We've had a couple of guys come and go, but for the most part, they've all stuck around. that's probably bad for the next guy that comes up, because there's a good chance that the majority of us will retire all about the same time. So, but I think the stability of that and the ever evolving process of our strength and speed program.
Yeah, Coach, obviously it's no secret, you guys want to establish the run game, attack on the ground with opponents, each week essentially knowing what's coming. It seems like you guys just execute week in and week out. Your kids know, they know what they're doing and they're focused and they execute. What getting back to that consistency, what is it that you do that you think you do well? You get 16, 17, 18-year-old kids to be so dialed in every week and really execute. I mean, that's again, what I find so, impressive with your program is that kids always are in the right spots, whether it's the line play or the quarterback or the running backs or anybody on the defensive side of the ball. They're always in the right place at the right time. They know what to do.
Well, I think, again, part of it goes back to the speed and the strength training, because I think our kids typically are more physical than our opponents. Not always, for sure. And I think because of that, we see a ton of different defensive fronts, especially. Our defense itself has pretty much remained the same. We are a base defensive team. We don't blitz much. We have very strict rules that our guys play to. Gap responsible, don't give up big plays, things like that. So we're not always perfect on defense, but we try to be solid. Offensively, though, I think because of our physicality, we probably by about week 3 or week 4 of the season, we have seen every defensive front known to man. And our kids are, by this time of year, they can easily adapt and adjust to changes that are on the field. And we work through those things week in and week out for what we think an opponent might show us. But in a lot of it is the kids making calls at the line of scrimmage just because it's stuff they've seen before.
Yeah, Coach, looking on the, at that running game a little more in depth, Gunnar Lobdell, Jake Zeal, Gage Dunker, they've kind of made up the running back by committee this year. And it seems like over the years, that's kind of been one of your calling cards, is you have several running backs that are ready to take the ball at any time. In this year's, iteration of that, what are their strengths? Talk about what you see in these, 3 that you kind of know this is their strong point.
Well, I think, Jake's been a 3-year starter for us. He actually played in the 2019 state championship game as a freshman, as a punt returner for us. So he's got a lot of experience, but Jake's the fastest guy. Well, some kids would argue it, but he's the fastest guy on our team at running back. Anyway, he's the fastest guy on our team. And he has that ability to make one cut and be gone. Jake doesn't have the amount of yards that Gunnar and Gage do, but he also doesn't have the same number of carries either. Gage is kind of a workhorse. He's going to get the tough yards and not nearly as fast as Jake and Gunnar, but gets the job done effectively. He's kind of a between the tackles kind of guy. And then Gunnar kind of has both elements of that. He's got a great stiff arm, loves to lower his shoulder on guys, can run it between the tackles, but also has the ability to bounce a run, make it look like it's going inside and then bounce it to the perimeter, which can be dangerous.
How do you, when you're in the middle of the game, how do you balance out, who's getting the carries in what situations? I mean, are you thinking about it in real time, whether it's, all right, we need a big play on the outside right now, so we're going to Jake, or we need those hard yards and we're going to Gage or Gunnar? Talk a little bit about the coaching, aspect of it. When it's the right time to call their number.
I don't know that we ever just say, hey, we want to balance it out. We want to make sure somebody has 15 carries and the other guy's got 14 or 12 or whatever. If on any given day it's any of the 3 and we give it to them 25 times, they get it 25 times. I think there are games where some guys are seeing the field better. Some guys just, for whatever reason, we all have those days, but some guys are having a better day than others. Certainly, we go go with that hot hand. But for the most part, I don't think it's not about ever keeping it even. It's they complement each other greatly, and any given day it might be a different guy. So I really can't explain it. I don't think there's a whole lot of thought process going into it, but there are times when it's definitely, Gage carried it 20 times the other day for 200 yards. Gunner only carried it 10 times, but what the defense was giving us was obviously, between the tackles and Gage is our guy there.
Yeah. Well, these three certainly aren't doing it alone. Talk about Henry Engel and the line play. Again, I know I keep saying that I'm impressed with the consistency, and a lot of that shows itself up front, where there's guys leading the way, making some huge blocks, and then, your running backs don't need a whole lot of space to be gone. Talk about your line play and what they do so well, every week in the trenches.
Well, I think, we are constant. We're not doing anything different than anybody else is doing. We're constantly telling our guys to get on blocks, stay on blocks, run your feet to the whistle, block the backside, block the weak side of the play, just as tough as we're blocking the play side. And then I think our backs take a lot of pride in getting it done as well. They're lead blocking for one another, sealing the edge or stepping up inside and making a big block on a linebacker. And then our tight ends do a great job of either down blocking or reach blocking and sealing the edge. They can do, they can kind of do it all. So, we're not easy on our kids, that's for sure. We require a lot out of them in terms of the mental and the physical part of it, but they just respond.
Yeah, Coach, we've talked a lot about over the years that the NUIC challenges everybody in the conference, that you have to play your best week in and week out. We saw that this year when you look at the 4 quarterfinalists on the north side were, Dakota and Forreston and Fulton and yourself. What did you see in this conference this year in particular that really pushed you guys? And obviously you rolled through, you had your success, but you had to beat a pair of good teams twice, and that's never easy. What has the conference done for you this year to get you to where you're at?
Well, I think it's the same as always. I think for the most part, obviously we'll see on Friday when we play Camp Point Central, but for the most part, it prepares you, physically for what you're going to see in the postseason, and maybe a lot of times better than what you're going to see in the postseason. Coming into the year, we knew that Forreston would be Forreston as always. We knew Fulton would be awful strong. They had a lot of kids coming back. We knew with Coach Sheets coming in at Dakota, they had some really, really good athletes coming back out, maybe for the first time in a couple of years. He's had a lot of success with the track and field program. We knew, we just knew that they were going to be a contender. And then you throw in an EPC who didn't have a great season, but they turn around and they beat a Dakota, and Dakota beats Forreston, and so just kind of, you never quite know. And I think for us, we probably stayed healthier than those teams did throughout the season. We had most of our guys all the time, although we weren't always perfect either. We lost Aiden Packard at the beginning of the year. He's still not back for us, and we knew he would be a great contributor at tight end and safety for us. And but we've had other guys step up and adapt and fill the role there. So I think just the week in and week out preparation that it requires to play near the top of our conference is something that helps you in the postseason.
Yep. Well, moving ahead into the state championship game, your opponent, Camp Point Central, they've compiled an impressive resume this season, and they're coming off an impressive win over Ridgeview Lexington. What have you seen on them, and what are you focused on this week in preparation?
Well, just they remind me a lot of ourselves. You're going to see, we don't do too many things offensively, but we're going to show you a handful of formations. They're a wing T team. They're going to trap. They're going to double dive you. They're going to rocket jet sweep you. throw the play action pass. They're big up front, 2 huge tight ends, big offensive tackle, big center. I think who was an honorable mention All-Stater, bigger than most people are in the backfield, with an All-Stater back there. And defensively, they're a 3-5 team. Coach Dixon does a good job of really playing his system. They remind me a lot of us. They don't blitz a lot of linebackers. They're just playing gap responsible football. Each and every guy knows their role, and they remind me a lot of us.
Yeah, well, they're going to look a lot like you too, because they have the same color scheme and they're called the Panthers. So they're going to look the same on the field and X's and O's wise, I suppose. But
right.
Looking at the trip to Champaign, how much does your program benefit from not only the extra games you had over the years, but to literally the logistics of the travel to a state championship, the walking into a college atmosphere? Do you think that your players, who have seen it some multiple times, how much does that benefit where there's not that they're not in awe necessarily? They've been there before. They've done it before.
Well, they've been there before and they've done it before, but I think the excitement of being at the U of I, nothing wrong with going to DeKalb. DeKalb has treated us very well over the years. They represent everything that should be represented about the IHSA. Their people there treat us extremely well. Facilities are first class. But there's just something about going to your state university that is a little bit different. The Wisconsin schools just got done playing at Camp Randall. That's got to be, an extreme emotional high for those kids when they walk in there. And I think it'll be the same for our kids as well. It'll just be a lot of fun.
Yep. So, Coach, what's your? I think I've asked you this before, but what do you do before a game? Where would I find you if it's you're getting into your kind of mental game and getting into the game prep? As the clock winds down closer to kickoff, is there anything you have to do, or any kind of superstitions or things that you do before a game?
No, I used to be pretty superstitious. Wear the same things and whatever. But at this point, when you get to be 56 years old, you're worried more about staying warm, staying dry, whatever. I think, the kids keep you humble over the years. And I think eventually whatever you thought were your superstitions at one time are gone, because you never know what's going to pop up. I think nothing's ever the same for us on a Friday or a Saturday or on this Friday morning. I think it's just all different, which that's okay. That's how life is anyway. And we should be able to adapt to really anything that's thrown at us, hopefully.
So the goal of trying to stay warm. So you're not the coach in shorts in any kind of weather's guy, huh?
No. We played a first round playoff game at Stillman Valley. Back in the day, it was the year Stillman Valley won their first state championship. So early 2000s. And it was awful cold out. And I was young and dumb, still wearing shorts. And I remember after the game, my dad said to me, he goes, "What the heck were you doing? That was stupid. And I don't think I've ever done it again."
But probably good advice. Always listen to your parents, right? Always listen to your dad. So,
right. Yeah.
All right. Well, Coach, before we wrap this up, before you head to Champaign on Thanksgiving, everybody has turkey, right? I'm assuming, but what's your side dish or dessert that you have to have on Thanksgiving?
Pumpkin pie.
There you go. There you go. All right. You have pumpkin pie lined up. Somebody make it for you, or do you make it, or?
No, I guess fortunately for me, 3 out of the last 4 years, I will not eat pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving Day, but I'll probably have it I'll probably have it Saturday night. We'll do Thanksgiving when we get back, and I'll have it Saturday night. So, better late than never, I guess. But if you're on the road on Thanksgiving Day, it's a good thing.
There you go. Yep, absolutely. Well, Coach, thanks a lot. Thank you for joining me, and good luck in Champaign.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Next up, it's Camp Point Central head coach Brad Dixon. Coach, thanks so much for taking a few minutes to join us here on View from the West.
Yeah, hey, I mean, it's obviously a fun time of year, and I'm excited to for our kids and our community for sure.
So we cover teams in the Lincoln Trail Conference, and that's kind of your old stomping grounds. You're a former Westmer Warrior, correct?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. The old Westmer days, Alwood, Monmouth Warren, Cambridge.
Yeah.
Princeville's still going strong. Stark County's still in there, but most of those teams, Rova, they've all kind of co-opted, and so it's changed a lot. But that was a lot of fun back in the day. We had two divisions, North and South, or East and West, I think it was back then.
Now you're at Camp Point Central, 12th year there. This is a program that, Coach, you've had playing at a high level, since you've been there. You finished a runner-up in 2018, but this year sitting at 13-0. Seems like this is kind of a high water mark for the program. Was this a year you had circled, or you knew might have some potential here?
Yeah, we did. I mean, we were pretty solid last year. We just kind of stubbed our toe in round two. Went to Central A&M after playing them in week 8, and they played very, very well at their place. And we thought that was a team that had a chance to make a run. But we graduated a lot of guys. We graduated 6 of our top O linemen off that group, an all-state running back. And so we had to replace those guys, but we also brought back quite a few guys off of that team. So we knew we had a chance. We had to figure out what we were going to do up front, because we had to kind of mix and match and that type of thing. But it's really shaped up. We've got a lot of depth this year. We got quite a few juniors and seniors, and we've had a freshman step up in Caden Ekamp on the D-line, and Elijah Ginenbacher as a sophomore middle linebacker. That's really helped.
Yeah, I've heard about, Elijah leading the way in tackles, and his brother, obviously Isaac, doing great work on the offensive side of the ball. We'll talk about them in a minute, but let's look back last week at your win over Ridgeview Lexington. Really impressive win, 44-8. They went to the semifinals a year ago, and I think when they kind of fell into that South bracket, people had them circled as a team, maybe a front runner to go to Champaign, and you took care of business against them on Saturday, going on the road. That's a great victory on the road in the state semifinals. What did you have planned to try to slow them down, and what worked so well?
Really, Greenfield in the quarterfinals was a great team that from our area that we normally play in conference. We didn't play. They ran a similar scheme at times when they got in their power ice stuff, and they were real physical in the first half, and they took a 12-0 lead on us. And we worked through that, understood what it was going to take, and we outscored them 24-0 in the second half. So we talked a lot about going over there. We hadn't been on the road since week 8 of the regular season, going over there, getting off the bus and coming out and playing physical, because that's not how we started our game last week. And we didn't want to let these guys get going. And fortunately, I guess, or unfortunately, we usually like to be on defense first, but we lost the toss over there and they chose to kick. So we got the ball first and we went down and probably an 8 or 10 play drive and scored. And I think that kind of eases everyone's mind a little bit, because, you just never know. We knew they were going to play a 4-4, much like Lena, but, teams that play that are really good, and they just played their assignments really well. And we were able to move it on them and get a stop then right after that, and then go down and score again. And then I think everyone definitely relaxes then. And then we were able to just kind of keep pouring it on in that first half and finishing off in the third quarter, getting the running clock.
Yeah, very impressive. I think a lot of us thought that, that game may be a toss-up, or two very good football teams going against each other. And man, just checking Twitter throughout the afternoon, it was like you just kept seeing score. So, just really impressive win. Looking ahead now at the state title game, you're the number 1 seed on the south side of the bracket, sitting at 13-0, like we referenced. A lot of hype going into this game, though, is Lena-Winslow. They're the number 1 seed on the north, and obviously they're the 2-time defending state champions in Class 1A. What do you say to your kids this week? What's the message? What's the mentality heading in that despite being 13-0, you guys may be viewed as the underdogs?
Yeah, we really thought we were last week. We kind of flew under the radar, going even back to the IHSA selection show. There were videos of every undefeated team but us, and we understand that we're over here in West Central Illinois, but our kids really, they haven't worried about that. We've done our thing all year, no matter who our opponent was. Obviously, Lena-Winslow is just a different animal in and of itself. We learned that the hard way against Forston in 2018. But I think this group's a little different in the fact that they don't get caught up with who we're playing. Like I said, we went to Ridgeview and they were a good team, and we talked all week about what they had done, and here's what'll happen if we don't take care of business and play our assignments. And this will be much of the same. I mean, we're going to have some good things go our way. Obviously, we're going to try to stick to our plan, which is, the more we can keep the ball on offense, the less they get it on offense. Obviously, you don't want them to have too many touches. That's kind of been why, one of the reasons we've been really good defensively this year is we've been able to consume a lot of time of possession. We haven't had a ton of big plays this year. You turn on the Lena film and it's big play after big play after big play, obviously. So hopefully we can keep the ball away from them. It always helps to get a few takeaways in key situations. You got to win first down, if we can get them in second and long, but if they can get in second and 3, it's going to be it's going to be rough, because then that opens the playbook to do whatever and try to stay ahead of the chains on offense for sure.
Yeah, well, Coach, you say they're a different animal, but really they're the same animal. You're both Panthers and you're both wearing the same colors. So,
yes, I mean, obviously some of the schemes are a little different, but we're trying to do the same types of things. Their guys are very well coached. They get off the ball. They play hard. There's certain films that you turn on sometimes and you see teams with good records, but then maybe you watch certain people not running the ball, or what happens when a little adversity hits or the ball goes away from them and things like that. And we try to highlight some of those to our kids at different times, but you turn this film on and you're getting their best every single snap. So, Coach Arand, he's got, kind of like myself, we've got some coaches that have been around a long time. We've been together. They've got a ton of guys that have been together. Everyone's got a job to do on our staff and on theirs, and they're going to be well prepared. And it really, it's cliche, but it's going to come down to fundamentally, who's able to play their assignments better and be more physical. And that's what the game's going to be determined by.
Yeah, Coach, when you look back throughout your season, what's really impressed me is that, you guys do a lot of what Lena-Winslow wants to do. You talked about that ground game and controlling the clock. Talk a little bit about your offense and some of the guys. I know Isaac Genenbacher's been a name leading the way. Ross Riley has kind of been his counterpunch along the way. What do you guys need to do? You kind of reference it a little bit, but what are the keys? What are you focused on to really try to move the ball against Lena-Winslow?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to obviously attack them in different spops. We're not just going to be able to line it up and give it to one guy. We haven't done that all year. Isaac's our leading rusher with 990 yards, but I think he's only averaging less than 10 carries a game. So we've got to rotate guys to keep him fresh. Lena plays a lot of their same guys in the backfield, which is, those guys have been able to do it all year and stay healthy because they're fast and strong. So hopefully we can use some of our depth. We've got to use Nick, our quarterback, we were without him between weeks about halftime of week 5 through week 8. He came back from an ankle injury in week 9, and we've been able to kind of throw it when we want to, as opposed, and that's part of that being ahead of the chains. If you can get in second and 3 situations at different times, you can throw, you can do some other things and really try to keep them honest. And we're going to use 2 fullbacks and Ross and Connor Griffin, and we're going to use everybody that we can. And Coach Ray, my offense coordinator, does a good job of trying to attack them in areas where maybe they're a little weaker, or their alignments might dictate whether they're a little tighter to the line of scrimmage, or they're a little narrower to our formation, or they're more on the edge. He does a nice job of doing that. And so we'll adjust throughout the game, and hopefully we'll be able to find some things. But, they close so quickly that those things, they dry up pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, on the defensive side of the ball, in 13 games, you've shut out 7 opponents. You're only allowing an average of, I believe, 5 points per game, a little over 5 points per game. What's your focus this week against, this high-powered offense? Like we've talked about, Lena-Winslow averages, I think, 51 points a game. Yeah. What are you guys going to do on defense? Do you think that you could try to limit them?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to play your base stuff the majority of the game. If you don't, and you guess and you add an extra blitzer, you bring a DB up, that's when they hit all those huge plays throughout the year. But you also got to have a few things ready. You've got to try in some situations to get an extra guy in certain spots, but they make it so hard like us because they can they can get in a strong formation, but then run the fullback back to the weak side, or, lots of different stuff. So we believe in our principles defensively and our reads and our keys and our assignments. Our kids have done a great job all year. They're going to have to do a better job this week than they have all year collectively. But, it's going to be a lot of do what we do, find some situational blitz situations, move the front around a little bit from time to time, and have a couple things ready. Obviously, if you're base stuff, you can't only come in with that. You got to have a few adjustments ready. But we've been pretty good this year when I've let the guys play. I mean, our guys pretty much called the whole game, except outside of maybe about 10 defensive calls on their own last week. They're pretty smart group. They know how to get aligned. They know what to expect. And so I've just told them I'm trying to stay out of their way and let them play fast. And that's what we're going to try to do, the best we can, try to slow them down.
Coach, you kind of referenced, that leadership on the field and them kind of making the plays and calling what they want to do. How valuable is that experience and that trust that you have with those players?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, especially we have a young group, really. I think we start 4 or 5 juniors, a sophomore, and a freshman on the defensive side. I think we have 7 guys that'll be back next year, but they're way ahead of the curve. I mean, Elijah as a middle linebacker, as a sophomore is playing like someone in our system in their senior year. It's pretty crazy, and he's a big kid. But he against Greenfield, I called him in a couple bad blitzes, and those are big plays for them. And I hate doing that. And that's the bind that Lena's going to put you in if you try to guess and gamble. Those 7-yard plays turn into 70-yard plays. And so we got to be cognizant of that. Like I said, we got to just make them earn it. They're going to earn some yards. They're going to earn some points. I mean, they're too dang good not to. But you got to limit those 60s and 70s and those back-breaking plays, especially when you get them in some 3rd and long situations. So we're going to go, and like I said, we're those guys that just looking at the film, and we'll meet today after school. Our guys are going to have an idea of what they want to play. I mean, and we put a lot on them, and they're excited about the challenge, obviously, just like last week, and we're going to give them a few things. Other things to kind of be ready for, but yeah, we got to do our stuff and just like Forrest, and they're not going to line up and they're going to come out and go shotgun just because we've only given up 5 points a game. They're going to line up in their stuff, and they're just going to say, hey, we're going to do it fundamentally, and you're going to have to tackle us. You're going to have to be able to get downhill. And that's the challenge of a state championship game. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Well, in our area, we've kind of talked a lot about the NUIC is not about, the unknown. Exactly what these teams are going to do week in and week out. And it's the challenge of trying to stop it. And, that's what makes it impressive. And you guys are, the same way when you look at kind of what you guys want to do, and offensively, defensively, things don't change week to week, but you do it very well. Overall, Coach, 13-0, you're headed back to the state championship game. How exciting is it for this community, for your program, just everything? As the momentum builds throughout the years, these are those moments you really look forward to.
I mean, absolutely. This is only the 2nd state championship game in any sport that our school's ever been a part of. We've made a couple nice girls basketball runs where we've gotten a 3rd and a 4th place in like 2015 and 16. We've got a 4th place golf and some individual placers in track and things like that. But you know what? I always tell our kids at the beginning of the year, football sets the tone for the entire year. It sets the tone for your homecoming. It sets the tone for the, just the student body. And if you have a good football season, people kind of catch that. It's fresh, and it's the start of the year. And we've had great crowds. We had a great crowd travel to Ridgeview on Saturday and brave the 10-degree weather that we had. We're going to bring a great crowd over there. We did last time. The thing I think this time will be a little bit different is, we've been there before. Obviously, our players haven't been. Some of them helped us with water bottles and filming, but our coaches, we've been there. We kind of have a better idea. Our community has a better idea. It's not as if it's something that we're just happy to be there, maybe like we were in 2018. We're excited, obviously, to be there, and we're very thankful to be there. But we want it to be also about business, and we want to put our best product on the field and represent our community a little bit better maybe than we did in 2018, and feel like we belong a little bit more maybe than we did that year.
Yeah. Well, Coach, when you make that trip to Champaign, regardless of the venue, do you have pregame superstitions? Do you have anything that you do every game or you have to do?
Yeah, I wear shorts for every football game. So
okay.
These last 3 weeks have obviously been tough, but I'll come out in the pregame while we're setting stuff up and there's not much adrenaline in pants. And I'll get people saying, Coach, where's the shorts? Like, I'll get them. And it's kind of like people, it's what I've done since I started coaching back when I was 19. I've just always been, now that I'm teaching PE, I wear shorts all year long in the weight room or whatever we're doing. So it's just that. And then, we try to keep the same routine for every game. We went over there early. on Saturday, and we had our meal like we normally would here at the school and did all that same stuff. And, obviously we don't quite have it down like Lee win. It's kind of like, okay, here we go. This is like another game for us. We've been here 6 times or whatever they've been. But hopefully that's something we're building down here in the South. And hopefully this year, one of these years, we're going to make a run at this thing.
So Coach Arand is not a shorts on the sidelines guy. He's now focused on dressing warm. So I think he's adjusted over the years, but you're the coach in shorts any time of weather, huh?
Yeah. And then obviously, I mean, it doesn't mean anything to how the kids play on the field, but that's just something that I've always done. And, our guys were in a lot of our team were in sleeves and all that. It's whatever you need to do to play at your best. We're not big into this, like if sleeves make you feel better, obviously we kind of, depending on if we're on offense, pull them up if you're running the ball, things like that. But we don't get involved in all that. You got to look tough on the field and all that. It's all about your performance. And obviously, we fought through quite a bit of weather here. And, whether it's 30 on Friday or 40, it's going to feel like 100, I feel like, after the last few weeks.
Well, Coach, before I let you go, I'm putting you on the spot here. What's your favorite memory as a Westford Warrior, whether it's, individually, a team, or just something that stands out to you when you look back at your time in Westmore High School?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, it was before I was even playing. So kind of got me into this mode of coaching as I was a freshman. But I was pretty smart and I liked the game. And so our defensive coordinator at the time, Lance Riccio, and Bob Stockham was the head coach. Bob still comes to several of my games, but they asked me if I would stand next to the defensive coordinator on Friday nights with a clipboard and chart down the defensive calls. And so on top of that, I would also string out all the cords. This was back in the late 90s. I would string out all the cords for the headsets. Then we had to run the cords from the press box down the ladders, run them all the way across the field. And then I would stand next to the D coordinator. And then, that was just something that made me feel like, I was kind of coaching in that regard. And then obviously, as a player, we were able to go 8-1 my senior year and win the West Division of our conference. And so those are a couple things, but definitely was my earliest memories were being able to be on the sidelines in a helpful coaching kind of role when I was a freshman in high school.
Awesome. Very cool to hear that kind of influence, as a high school student. It's kind of parlayed into a coaching career. So very cool. Well, Coach, as before you get to the state championship game here, you may have Thanksgiving, or you pushing Thanksgiving till after the game. Either way, what's your must-have side dish or dessert that you have to have on Thanksgiving?
I am a dessert guy, so
okay.
I like cakes or pies or cookies or any of that stuff. German chocolate cake's my favorite of all time. So sometimes I feel like I could skip out on all the rest and just eat dessert. That's how I.
There you go. Well, Coach Arand, he also is a dessert guy, so he references the pumpkin pie. So there you
go. That's a good choice.
All right. Well, Coach, thank you so much for taking time. Good luck this weekend.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. So there's a look at the matchup from the head coaches walking the sidelines. Mitch, now we're going to bring in our experts. Yeah. I'm not sure what we're experts on, but we like to talk about football, and I guess we like to hear ourselves talk, I suppose. So we have Matt Schuckman from MuddyRiverSports.com, Kyle Kampmeyer from NUICFootball.com. First of all, Matt, thank you so much. Schuck, I shouldn't call you Matt. Nobody calls you Matt. Schuck, thank you so much for being here. I listen to your podcast. I know Mitch does too. So it's great to have you on the show here and give your perspective.
Dude, I'm honored to be here. This is awesome. I love what you guys do. We had talked about next year we should like overlap sometime and do like a double pod show. And
absolutely.
Yeah. We got to figure out a way to do that, because we could talk all day about Western Big Six football in the middle of the season.
Yes, we should. Yeah, more than one episode, but we could certainly find a time to meet in Macomb. I like that too.
I like that idea.
And actually, I tried to find even a more central location, but then you get in some really small towns, which I'm not opposed to, but it would be fun to find the absolute most middle point. We'd find some small town, I'm sure DOB would find a dive bar in one of those small towns for us, right?
I guarantee we can find something. And that's the thing we would have to do. We'd have to find a good old dive to sit at and hang out and have the good old boys look at us like, what in the world are you guys doing here?
All right. Well, Matt, thanks for being here. And we also bring in Kyle Kampmeyer from NUICFootball.com. Kyle, have you thawed out yet from that 8-man football game last week?
Yeah, luckily I followed that up with another cold one in Freeport for the Lena-Winslow Forreston semifinal game. So I actually spent more time outside for the semifinal game. I was fortunate enough to be in Monmouth and be in the press box there for most of the game. So, but yes, very cold weekend. I'm excited because Champaign's going to be a lot warmer this weekend.
That's crazy the way it works out, but yes, it will be. But I remember last year covering a state championship game, and you were up in the press box for most of that one. So I did the work down on the sideline freezing, but
you did, and I will be in the press box once again.
You're smart man. I can't deny that. Well, Schuck, I'll start with you. You've been following Camp Point Central throughout the year. You followed them over the past several years. Talking to head coach Brad Dixon, the interview we just heard, this is a year they'd kind of had circled a little bit. This is a program that's consistently there. They're on the upper end, but this seems like a real kind of high water mark, 13-0 heading into a state championship game.
Yeah, second state title game appearance. They were also there in 2018. 13 wins is the most in school history. So first time they were 12-2 that year. They lost in the state title game in 2018. But yeah, they had a bunch of injuries last year. They had a really strong senior class, a really good junior class, and they ended up with a couple of injuries that kind of hurt them last year. Lost in the second round to Mawikwa Central A&M. And you thought, okay, they could be really good this year. And I think the question marks they had were up front because they graduated all 6 linemen from last year's team. So it was like you had a brand new offensive and defensive line. You had all these skill guys around them who were really good. And you knew they were going to get used. And it was like, okay, how's he going to use them? How many of the guys is he going to use? And fact of the matter is his best players hardly touched the ball this year. And that's the unique thing about it is I was looking at Lena-Winslow's stats and their stats are off the charts. I mean, they're almost video game number-esque, averaging 12 yards a carry. 2 of their top 3 runners, 3 guys over 1,000 yards. Central's not that way. They spread it out. There were, I think, 2 different games this year where they had 12 different guys run the ball. And so it's been building, and his process has worked, and his process has changed over the years. And if anybody listened to the IHSA media call that went on this week, he talked a little bit about that. And if you see Brad Dixon in person, he's a guy that you want standing next to you in a barroom brawl. And you'll see him on Twitter get up at, you'll see a tweet from him at 4:35 in the morning, and it's just hashtag up early to train. And he's in the weight room, and I mean, dude's jacked.
So we need him when we go to that dive bar tour, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Most definitely. And so that was the way their program was, those guys got in the weight room. They worked hard in the weight room. Well, then they started adding the speed element. And then you started seeing things on Twitter from him change and the conversations from him change. Now he's also the track coach. So it went from thinking they needed to be big and strong and burly and stuff to being what they call the fast cats. And they speed train now. Yep. And look at what it's done. I mean, they outrun everybody. We've seen plays this postseason where it's guys hit a gap, guys that aren't very big hit a gap and just run away from people. And it all comes back to their training. And listening to Coach Arand talk this week as well, I mean, he was talking about how their commitment to their strength and speed training. And it sounds very similar to what Camp Point Central is doing.
I was going to say that's very interesting that you bring that up, because that's what Coach Arand talked almost exactly about in our interview, earlier on this podcast, was saying that they had, built up a strength training, and then over the years it started becoming the speed element too. So they were doing strength and conditioning, or strength and speed, and combining those elements. Kyle, we've talked about it a lot, that what separates Lena-Winslow. Everybody wants to know, like, what's the secret sauce? And it's not easy to discover. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but a very core element to that is the weight room, and it is that speed training, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you take a look at what Lena-Winslow is in comparison to the rest of Class 1A. And it's very easy to see that the physical element is very present when you see Lena-Winslow. I mean, it's almost like looking at a college team at some cases compared to a small high school team. And I mean, you can just see it in their physique. You just see everything ripping out of their shirts and whatnot. And, where they're at right now reminds me of where Dakota was at in the mid 2000s, because Dakota had that, feel about him, and Mitch knows firsthand because he got to go up against that 2005 team that was just a very physical team.
Too soon, he says. Too soon.
Yeah. Too soon. 17 years later, and it's still too soon.
Still burns.
But it is the weight training. One of the things that you hear Coach Arand talk about in your interview with him was that he's had his core group of guys together for almost 20 years. And when you break that down, not only is it the longevity that helps out, but it's one of the things I talked to many people about when we're discussing why Lena-Winslow has found so much success, especially in the last 12 years. And it's the fact that you have every high school head coach is part of the football staff. So not only are they doing the weight training in the summertime, where they're getting up at 6 a.m, going to the gym and getting their workouts in, but you have weight training going on during basketball season. You have weight training going on during wrestling season, baseball season, track season. I mean, and then you take a look, like the speed aspect. Mitch's buddy Austin is the speed coach there. He's the track coach, and he helps out on the football staff for that element alone. I mean, if you watch Lena-Winslow on Friday begin their workouts, it's Austin leading those workouts to get stretched out and go through all of that part of it before they break off into their group training to get warmed up for the game. Obviously, you got the offensive coordinators, Kyle Benson. He's also the basketball coach. The defensive coordinator is Kevin Milder. He's the wrestling coach. You have Nick Werhane on staff. He's not only just the head baseball coach, but he's the junior high football coach as well. So you start to bring all of these different facets together. And, one of the biggest things that you see is because Rick is a junior high PE coach, they really start getting the weight training going earlier than what most people do. They start it in junior high, and they start to get the development parts of it down. Like, they're not trying to push the weights so much, more so the technique, so that as the technique builds, the strength comes with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really fascinating to hear both these teams programs kind of mirror each other, and that maybe it's Camp Point Central is on the verge of being that program, right? Like they're continually taking steps. So I just think it's a really interesting matchup this season in that dynamic. Matt, what are we looking at? Schuck. Sorry, what am I doing? Schuck. Schuck Daddy. What are we looking at here as far as, offensive players to watch for and kind of what they want to do? And I think it's Camp Point Central's goal is very similar to what Forreston's goal was, and maybe what several other teams' goal is along the way. They want to try to hold the ball as long as they can, control the clock. And I think when you get to this point in the year and you're facing a team as good as Lena-Winslow is, it's very important. It's not as easy as it probably was a few weeks ago, but what are they going to try to do here? Give me some names.
They're going to run the ball. I mean, they're going to run the ball, and they're going to spread it out to a bunch of different backs. They run a double wing formation. They love to use the fullback. They've got two different fullbacks they'll go to. Ross Riley had 115 yards and 3 touchdowns against Colfax last Saturday. And again, they're going to give misdirection. They're going to give a lot of, they're going to keep it between the tackles, and then they're going to try to spring one of their little guys free off the edge. They're all-stater, first-team all-stater. Isaac Genenbacher has, he doesn't even have 1,000 yards yet this year. 990 yards and 17 touchdowns. And he's clearly the best player on the field for them. And he's touched the ball maybe 8 or 9 times a game, because they haven't needed to give him it. If they ran an I formation, and Coach Dixon talked about this, Gennebacher would be the guy that got the ball 25 or 30 times. But they give it to so many different guys, and they try so much misdirection with that double wing formation as a way to get defenses on their heels and then control the clock. They want long, steady drives. They're not looking for the big hitter here. Occasionally, yeah, that happens. But they're looking for 5, 6, 7 yards of play so that they can control the clock, they can move the chains, and keep especially this week, keep Lena-Winslow's offense on the sideline as much as possible. And if you look at the numbers, it's really interesting. You look at it. Gennebacher's got over 900 yards. The 2 fullbacks have 750 yards each. And then your other wingbacks have almost 400 yards each. So you don't know who's going to get the ball on any given play. And they're willing to give it to anybody, pretty much. They don't throw the ball a ton. Their leading receiver is Gennebacher. He's got 17 catches for 353 yards and 4 touchdowns. They've thrown 5 touchdown passes all year.
Yep. Compared to Lena-Winslow, though, that seems like a air raid offense.
Yeah, what Lena-Winslow, correct me if I'm wrong, 17 passes, 9 completions, 7 touchdowns on the season.
They're actually 8 for 15, so 8 completions for 7 touchdowns.
Wow.
Is what I have.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So we're not going to see the ball in the air much on Saturday.
No, it'll be a quick moving game. But you talked about kind of the spread, the spread workload for Camp Point Central. And Kyle, it's a very similar type of thing with Lena-Winslow. What you look at the end of the year statistics, and you start looking at who leads the way in the NUIC top of the rushing standings, and also looking at like all state type of nominations. And those running backs, Gage Dunker, Jake Zeal, and Gunnar Lobdell, those names, they split the workload so equally, and they all did a fantastic job that in almost any other, you figure a majority of programs around the state, if that kid's isolated on that team, he's getting 2,000 yards maybe? And in this offense, they didn't need to. 3?
Yeah.
3?
It's very easy. I mean, you take a look at how many times that they're sitting by the time the third quarter starts, or halfway through the third quarter, they're already on the bench as well. So, I mean, could their numbers be a lot higher than they are currently? Yes. I mean, if you did go to an offense that just ran a strictly feature back, yeah, I mean, you could give Lobdell 2,000 yards and you could give Dunker 2,000 yards. I mean, you take a look between the 3 of them. I mean, they're almost at 4,000 yards collectively, the 3 of them. So you take one out of the equation, you're really not hurting too much because you can still make some damage. You could throw somebody else in there if you wanted to, and you don't even have to use them because the other 2 guys are going to take the workload and carry with it.
So Kyle, from what you've seen in Lena-Winslow, week in and week out, and you look at this Camp Point Central defense, who is Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're only averaging giving up like a little over 5 points a game.
Yeah, that's right. And they gave up 12 to Greenfield in the first half of the state quarterfinal game, and then outscored them 24-0 in the second half.
Yeah. So I guess getting back to, Kyle, the question for you is, obviously Lena-Winslow is a high-powered offense. What is most important for them against this Camp Point Central defense that has really slowed down a lot of teams over this year?
Well, it's going to come down to getting off the line quick. I mean, we heard Rick say that in the media talk today. He's got to be able to get off the line. Yeah, and really in a matchup like this where you have 2 predominantly running teams, line plays everything here, and it's going to be who can win the line of scrimmage and who's going to be fastest off the line. And you also heard Coach Dixon talk about it too, as far as he knows that he needs to attack. He knows that he cannot let his guys sit back and wait to see what's going to happen, because if they sit back, the linemen are already going to be up on them, and Lena-Winslow is going to have a heyday. And if I'm Lena-Winslow, that's exactly what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to find the weaknesses as the gameplay goes on to where I need to attack. Who's sitting back waiting on anticipation rather than anticipating the play ahead of time and just keeping their keys down. And, you heard both coaches talk about assignment football. And that's when you take a look at Forston, who actually reminds me the most of CPC, simply because I know that Coach Dixon studies a lot of what both Lena-Winslow and Forston do. But when you break down what CPC does, they almost look identical to what Forston does with the traps, the double dives, the leads, and then they try to get the sweeps going to the outside. The only thing that they do that Forston doesn't do is they'll add in a jet sweep in there at times too. But for Lena-Winslow, you got to attack, you got to execute, you got to stay on your block. If you get off your block, you better be downfield blocking somebody else. And I heard Kyle Benson say that this week. One of his linemen made a block, and it was a great block, and the runner ran by him, but then he became a spectator, and you cannot become a spectator. If you become a spectator, something bad's going to happen, and you got to keep moving, and you got to find somebody else to go hit.
Mitch is a good spectator. That's why he was a quarterback, right? He hands the ball off, and then he can spectate.
Yeah, that was my job, is just to give it to somebody else, and then whatever happens from there happens. So yeah.
Sorry, Mitch. I had to throw that in.
No, it's fine. You know what? I'll jump in here because I think that Kyle said it best when he said that the Camp Point kind of reminds us the most of Forston, right? A running back by committee. They're going to run different traps, different sweeps, up the middle, whatever it may be. And that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because I think that style of play is what maybe can beat Lena-Winslow. The problem is that Lena has seen that twice with Forston and taken care of business both times. So, in a game like this where you have teams that, as we talked about, kind of mirror each other, right? In terms of nickname, in terms of colors, in terms of scheme, both teams that have a lot of speed, both teams that have a lot of power. I think Kyle also nailed it there in the head, where it's going to come down to execution and who can execute the best, do the fundamentals. And both coaches said that too in their interviews. So who can stick to the fundamentals? Is that going to lean towards Lena with the experience of being at the state championship, as recent as last year? Obviously, Camp Point's been there too. But I don't think the environment's going to be too big for either team. But who can kind of keep locked in mentally the best? Because again, both these teams are really, really similar.
Yeah. Matt, Schuck, when you look at, I did it again, Matt, Schuck, when you look at this Camp Point Central defense, and I mean, it's a large task in front of them. What do you see from their individuals that need to be playmakers here that could make the difference? If they're going to win this game, if they're going to compete in this game, who's got to step up? What's got to happen?
Well, their young kids have to play bigger and older and more mature than their age actually is.
Yeah.
And that starts in the middle linebacker with Elijah Genenbacher, only a sophomore. They've got a freshman along the defensive line, Caden Niekamp. Those guys have to play like they're juniors and seniors if they want to contend with Lena-Winslow. I think the biggest thing is they got to use what size they have to clog everything up. Because that's the one, when they've given up yards, when they've given up touchdowns, when they've allowed teams to move the ball on them, it's because they've been able to get space up front, and guys haven't kept to their responsibilities and plugged the gaps and made life hell up front for the opposing offensive line. This game gets won in the trenches. And I think, to be honest, I think that's where Lena-Winslow wins this game. I think their physicality front is going to give them an edge up front. Now, can Camp Point combat that with some speed? Can they combat that with their pursuit on defense? Because their linebackers are their best part of their defense. But if they get beat up front, those linebackers are making plays 4 or 5 yards downfield instead of at the line of scrimmage or a yard downfield.
Yeah. So, Kyle, does that take us to our picks, our predictions? I saw you already put something out in your kind of game, game preview, your game info. So what does your information tell you?
I mean, obviously, according to the Freeman ratings, Lena-Winslow is going to enter this game as a 12-point favorite. And when you go into the projection model, it says that Lena-Winslow will win by 16 points. That's what I put out there, was Lena-Winslow winning 36-20. Obviously, there's a lot of things. It's not 100%, right? This is just taking raw data off of information compiled over the course of the season, and then it computes it back out to you, right? But there's always been a lot of talk, especially around CPC this year. Are they for real? And it's hard to tell because they play in the WIVC, which is a closed conference. We have seen the WIVC in the state championship game 4 times now since 2014, Carrollton twice and now CPC twice. And both of them have had to go up against Forston and Lena-Winslow. Obviously, this will be the first time CPC sees Lena-Winslow ever in history, so it'll be an interesting matchup. But you heard Coach Dixon talk about it. He knows what Lena-Winslow is. He's paid attention like most coaches do. Obviously, there's quite a few of the Central kids that actually follow myself on Twitter, so I mean they definitely keep up with what I post, because I saw a couple of them already like that projection model I put out there today. So, I have seen film on both. I've seen some of the competition that Camp Point Central has played. I went down to Jacksonville in round 1 of the playoffs to watch Route play Villa Grove. And then at halftime, I left that game and went down to Greenfield to watch Greenfield Northwestern play Calhoun, and got a firsthand look at what the competition looks like. I already had a little bit of an idea, as I do keep up with the WIVC on a regular basis. I got a couple friends that are in the coaching ranks at Calhoun, at one time at Carrollton, at Brown County. So obviously I know Barry Creviston at Route too. So I do pay attention to what they have going on. Obviously the NUIC has proven to be on a different level over the past few years. I just took a look. This is their 11th. Well, technically, it's their 12th trip to state in 12 seasons, but that's because we had 2 teams go in 2014. So really, in 11 of the past 12 seasons, there's been at least one NUIC team at state representing the conference. And in that time, they've only lost 1 time, and that was in 2012 when Stockton lost to Maroa Forsyth. So obviously, the power is with the NUIC. And most notably, it's with Lena-Winslow right now. They are the hottest team in Class 1A, and they have been for the last 5 years. And the only other team that's really been able to compete with them since 2013 has been the Forston Cardinals. So it's interesting to see. I think that there's been a lot of speculation around CPC possibly being overrated. But, that eye-opening win last week in the semifinals, I mean, I know I'm not the only one that really had Ridgeview Lexington picked. I mean, it was easy to say that they were the favorite in Class 1A South with the minute we saw the brackets come out and the Mustangs went to the South. And obviously CPC was able to take care of that with a running clock as well. So I'm very interested to see how this breaks down. Obviously, they do have some good size. They got Cole Pracht on the line. He's 320 pounds. And then you got a couple other guys there that have some good size as well. Like you said, Genenbacher is a huge deal in the run game. I do expect that he will get more carries in this game. I don't think that Coach Dixon's going to go too far off of his game plan, because he shouldn't. You got to stick with your guns if you want to win. But you're going to have to make adjustments as the gameplay goes on. Line wise, definitely, I would have to say I favor Lena-Winslow. There's no doubt about it. They got not just the size, but they got the strength and the speed as well. And, anything's possible in this game. A couple mistakes here or there. It reminds me of 2013. Lena-Winslow stole a state championship there. They were not the favorite. Tri-Valley was. And Tri-Valley, honestly, they should have been up 28-0 at half. But instead, they went in up a touchdown. And in the second half, Lena-Winslow put up a huge defensive effort, returned 2 fumbles for touchdowns, and came away as the state champs that year. And anybody can do that. I mean, you take a look at the Panthers of Lena-Winslow. They've only fumbled the ball 6 times all year on 471 attempts. So that's 1% of the time they put the ball on the floor. Obviously, they've thrown 0 interceptions, so they don't turn the ball over much. They do a great job of taking care of the ball. But last year, we watched Lena-Winslow have problems with Carrollton where they were driving and they could have been up 38-6, 40-6, something like that at halftime, but they got that fumble there that Carrollton was able to recover. And, they got some late responses from Grant Pullman before the half to really keep that game closer than what it looked like, especially with the physicality up front that Lena-Winslow had. And, you bring a lot of those, or I shouldn't say a lot, but you have some of those players back this year with Zeal, with Dunker. You got the linemen in Tippett and Engel and Pecoraro are all back. So, going on experience, yes, CPC's been there before, but the kids that are playing today have not. Whereas Lena-Winslow has had that experience. I mean, you heard Ric Arand say that Jake Zeal was a specialist in the 2019 state championship game as a freshman as well. So, they do have some experience to back themselves up on, but at the same time, I've taken a look at what Coach Dixon has said, and it does, you do see it. I mean, the Central Panthers definitely have a lot of team camaraderie. You can see it in the pictures as well. You hear it with Coach Dixon's interviews where they're picking each other up. So I'm really excited for this game, but I put out my podcast. Well, I recorded it earlier today. I have Lena-Winslow winning 44-20.
I do want to reference before we go any farther that there was one amongst Mitch and Kyle and myself that did pick Camp Point Central to be in this state championship game. That would be myself. I'm going to brag because I don't get these picks right all the time. So I'm going to brag that I did call this. I called Camp Point Central to be here. Schuck, can I put you on the spot as a journalist? You gonna make a prediction here, or?
So I'm listening to Kyle talk about things. Lena-Winslow has a huge advantage in experience. Those kids have been in that game. There are actually 2 Camp Point kids who have a state title game experience. Drew Paben was the water boy in 2018, and Gavin Blewett was helping videotape.
There you go.
So they were there. They just weren't playing there. So, but no, that is a huge factor. The understanding the how to approach the day, how to approach the game, how to approach the setting is a huge factor for Lena-Winslow. Camp Point doesn't have that. The coaching staff does. And I know Kyle mentioned it earlier with Lena-Winslow of the continuity of the staff. That's one reason Camp Point Central is here. Because when you look at Brad Dixon's staff, he's had guys that have stuck around who have made a life in Camp Point, who are coaching other sports as well. Casey Monroe, who's been there, I think, 12 years now, also coaches wrestling. He's got another assistant that's new this year, but in Zach Houston, who's a Central graduate, but has coached baseball and football and at some other schools and is now as an assistant in those sports at Camp Point. So there's a reason why they're here on a number of levels. Now, with that said, they've been doubted all year. They were state ranked. Everybody kind of picked them to win the WIVC North, but nobody thought that the North and the rest of their schedule prepared them to make a run like this. Like everybody went, okay, Are they overrated based on state rankings because of who they played? Are they prepared to beat a tough team deeper in the postseason because of who they played? And I think there were doubts all along, and this team got a chip on its shoulder because of that. Could that help them this week? Sure. You play with a chip on your shoulder, anything's possible. Because if things go wrong, Lena-Winslow makes a mistake, Camp Point capitalize on it. There you go. I don't expect Lena-Winslow to make many mistakes, but what if it happens? Can Camp Point capitalize on that? One of my buddies here called him, it's the Dragon and the Dragon Slayer. Can Camp Point Central be the Dragon Slayer this week and take down the big beast? Sure, anything can happen. I don't think it happens. I think Lena-Winslow is as good as it is, and the reason it's there year in and year out is because of that continuity, because of that strength and training, and they're just darn good. I mean, they're
yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta go, that is a darn good team. They're gonna win. And it doesn't matter who we're covering, who you're there for. You just look at it and go, that's the team to beat. And that's Lena-Winslow this year. Camp Point Central is going to find a way. Brad Dixon and his staff is going to find a way to try to make this competitive. And if a break goes their way early and they find a way to get a lead, maybe they can milk it. Maybe they can go on a couple of those 10, 12, 14 play drives that take off 6, 7, 8 minutes. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. And the more I poured over the numbers, slowing Lena-Winslow is a huge task. I think Camp Point Central's got a chance to slow them a smidge. I don't think they can slow them enough to win, but I think it's going to be pretty competitive. And maybe not quite as high scoring as Kyle thought. I was thinking more in the 28-12 range.
Yep. That makes sense. I think what stands out to me is Kyle referenced it that last year, Lena-Winslow did kind of get off to a slow start. And there was kind of, as I was walking the sideline, that kind of like, that you could feel that tenseness, that Lena-Winslow felt like they should control this game and they're not. And what's going on? And now that being said, Mari Roby arrived and took care of business and the game was over. But my question becomes, is this Camp Point Central team maybe a little better than that Carrollton team was a year ago? Are they a team that's willing or that's able to maybe take advantage of some of those mistakes if they happen? Now, it's not likely that they're going to happen, but Schuck, like you said, what if they do? Then who knows? So, Mitch, I'll default. I'll go to you. What say you on this matchup?
I was just looking at it. Take both teams out of it, right? It's been 10 years since a team from the South has won, and that was Maroa Forsyth in 2012. So, we talk a lot about the strength of Northern Illinois football, just as a whole. And I think just the style of play that Lena is used to year in, year out, playing in the NUIC, or even if they play an out-of-conference opponent, whatever it might be. I just think year after year, North Illinois football is better, right? So talking about the Carrollton game last year, I think that was more, I don't remember that quarterback's name, but I don't think they saw an athlete like him. I thought he was really the difference in that first half before Lena figured it out. So looking at this game, when you have a team as similar to them as Camp Point Central is, I almost think that favors Lena just even more, honestly. And again, that goes back to how well they fared against Forreston last week and in the regular season. So I've got Lena's experience. I've got Lena's power being the difference in this one. I'm going to go 38-14, Lena.
Yep. I'm in lockstep with you guys. I did predict Camp Point Central and Lena-Winslow to be here. I just want to say it one more time so we all remember that it happened. But I did take Lena-Winslow to win the state championship. I've been so impressed with them all year long. And what I saw firsthand in the game against Fulton in the quarterfinals was just, I said it in my interview with Coach Arand that I was just so impressed with the way that every kid on the field, all 11, execute so well that it's line play, it's running backs, it's quarterback, it's everybody. On the defensive side of the ball, it's the same thing. They're all flying to the ball. They're all doing their job. They're not overcommitting. They're not making a mistake. I've been really impressed with Lena-Winslow. That being said, I think this Camp Point Central team, I believed in them, right? I felt like they were a really strong team this year and that this was a time for them to make this push to the state championship game. I hope it's a close game. I interviewing both coaches on the show today. They both run great programs. It's what we all love about small school Illinois football. They do it the right way, whatever quote unquote the right way is. It just feels like they're so committed to these small towns and to these programs. I hope it's a close game. I hope it's kind of that, that celebration of small school football. If we can get an ending, if it comes down to the end, that'd be great. I do think Lena-Winslow is the better team, in this one. So do we have anything else to talk about in the Class 1A? If there's a podcast for anybody around the state that breaks down the 1A game better than we did, I'd love to hear it.
There's not.
Man, this is great. This has been excellent. I love this. And actually, Schuck, did Camp Point Central get a Schuck on the truck this year?
Coach Dixon and I did one the other day before the semifinal.
Awesome.
And if all goes well, we're going to do a Schuck on a truck with the offensive lineman on Wednesday.
Okay. Oh, I love it. Great stuff.
Got to give the boys up front some love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I've been impressed with Lena-Winslow the same way. Like the guys in the trenches are doing the work for these running backs and creating the space. So I guess before we move along, we'll end on a high note. How much fun has it been to be around this Camp Point Central program and to kind of see this year kind of culminate in this trip to Champaign?
It's been a great blast to get to know the community as well as I have. The Genenbacher kid.
Yep.
The two brothers on their team, their uncle and I played YMCA football together.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And so there's a ton of connections when you go back to, and when you're around a group of coaches and you guys, and it seems like Lena-Winslow is the same way. When you're around a group of coaches that are just good dudes that you can sit there and talk to, you can go out to practice and kind of BS with them a little bit, and you can talk about more than just football. You love doing that. And Camp Point is very much that way. They just make it enjoyable for everyone.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, I'll ask you before we wrap up, how excited is your wife? Because she's a Lena-Winslow grad, so I know she's excited.
Well, yeah, she's very excited. So excited that we have her brother coming along too, who happened to be on the 2009 team that lost in the semifinals to Lexington. So, it was one of those things where it was going to be a little bit of fitting if Ridgeview Lexington had made it just for that aspect. But at the same token, I have the utmost respect for what Coach Dixon does at CPC. I'm really excited to see where he is driving his program. The things he does, like I said, it reminds me a lot of what Forston and Lena-Winslow do. And I know in talking to Coach Dixon in the past, I know he's done a lot of things to study and emulate what those two teams do because he sees them as being highly successful teams in the state. And if you want to beat the best, to be the best, you got to beat the best. And I think he understands that. His game philosophy matches that. Obviously, he comes from an area that had a lot of football tradition, being from Westmer and going up against those great Alito teams in his day as well. So he sees it, he understands it, and it's great to see. And, just in talking to him, I mean, he's always so open to help other coaches out, and he'll talk to anybody if you give him a second to let you there to converse with them. And it's great. I'm excited to see this game. As far as Carrie, she's ready to go. I think she's got half her bag already packed, and it's only Monday night. So.
Oh man, yeah. I was there last year. We walked the sidelines, and she was taking photos, and I was getting some video. And very proud alum, loves it. So it's great. And
yeah, she was going through her cameras, making sure she's got everything loaded, ready to go. We fired up the laptop, making sure that's all ready to go. Cause I honestly, I haven't worked off the laptop all year. So got to get everything uploaded and downloaded and all that good stuff. So
awesome. Well, yeah, for anyone listening, I encourage you follow along nuicfootball.com on Twitter and, on their website. Kyle Kampmeyer, you do a great job of covering that conference. You're going to be all over it on Twitter on Friday morning, in a balmy, nice, warm Champaign morning to cover a state championship. And also Matt Schuckman with MuddyRiverSports.com. I love your coverage, and I love what you guys have created down there in Quincy, and, given a lot of love to not just Quincy, but the, surrounding area, including Camp Point Central. So I'm sure you guys will also have coverage down there in Champaign, have it all covered. So very exciting stuff. Well, should we move into some other classes here and see the matchups and see what stands out to us?
Yeah.
We're looking at, in Class 2A, Downs Tri-Valley had the win over Moreau Forsyth 36-6. They go up against Decatur St. Teresa 13-0. That's a team we thought would probably be here. They got the job done over Johnston City, who had come into the game at 12-0. They won that one 39-15. So it's Downs Tri-Valley and Decatur St. Teresa. I mean, on paper, this looks like it's St. Teresa's year, right? They got upset last year on a crazy game in the semifinals against Nashville. This seems like it's Decatur St. Teresa ready to win a state title.
They returned a lot of guys from last year. Obviously, they wanted to have that opportunity to face Nashville again. The seedings worked out to where they could have met up with them in the semifinals, but Nashville got knocked out early. But St. Teresa definitely looks like they're on a mission. I mean, we were able to see them live up here when they had to come to Pecatonica, play Dupec, and they looked every part of the real deal. I was really shocked to see them not get there, but they definitely have that chip on their shoulder. The Broomer brothers are definitely taking control here, and obviously they got a few other guys there that are helping have major contributions this year, it's fun to see. But Tri-Valley, man, have they turned some things around. They went to the spread this year, getting away from their typical wishbone double wing type style offense, and Coach Roop, despite going to the spread, has went back to a power run game coming out of the spread. And obviously we've seen it as Reginald's ran for almost 700 yards in the last 2 weeks. So he's definitely starting to tear it up, and Tri-Valley's starting to get hot. So this game definitely has me very intrigued, to say the least.
Yeah, Schuck or Mitch?
Well, the interesting thing I thought is so many people were hoping for a Moreau Forsyth Decatur St. T showdown because of their close proximity.
Yep.
So I know that there was a little bit of luster lost on the title game from that area, just like, oh, we don't get to see the dream matchup. Fact of the matter is, St. T, I think, is head and shoulders above everyone else right now in 2A, and I think, again, they've done a great job with their offense. They've done a great job of building that program. I think they win. I think they win handily.
Mitch? Yep.
Yeah, I think St. T wins too, but I've been impressed with Tri-Valley. You know, that they beat Wilmington in round 2 and then in Moreau in the semis. So they've certainly been battle tested. Blake Reginald's really, really good. So if St. T can kind of keep him in check, yeah, I do think this one could get away from them. But I wouldn't be surprised if Tri-Valley keeps it close because, like I said, they've been battle tested. They've beaten perennial winners. So yeah, looking forward to this game.
Yeah, let's move into Class 3A. This is the bracket that I think, kind of had everybody, all eyes around the 3A bracket. There were just so many teams in that north side, and no offense to the southern side of the bracket, but man, the north was just absolutely loaded. And a team that we kind of thought would be there, they're there. IC Catholic. Last year, they got upset in the semifinals by Byron on a last-second play. This year, we got that rematch again at IC Catholic. IC Catholic took care of the job, no problem, 35-0. So I guess, Mitch, my question becomes, Did we see the de facto state championship with IC Catholic and Princeton in Princeton a week ago?
Yeah, I think so. And whatever happened in that game, that IC Catholic found a spark in Joey Gliata.
Yeah, no kidding.
He followed that up in the semifinals with another 180 yards. So I don't know why he played in the first place. I don't know if their two running backs are hurt or they just went to him as a spark, but he's got it. There's no doubt about that. So, yeah, I think I might have picked Byron to beat them in the semifinals. So the way that IC Catholic won puts things in a different perspective. Like I said, I think that now that they've got their running back figured out a little bit, maybe they kind of have their direction. So yeah, I mean, Williams, though, they're no, they're a really, really good program. Close win there against Unity in the semifinals. But they've had a tough road too. So, but yeah, I think IC Catholic, they get their championship after a tough year last year. And yeah, they're a good team. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Schuck, have you followed along with this 3A bracket, and where are your thoughts here?
Well, I had the opportunity a couple of years ago when Williamsville rallied in the second half to beat Quincy Notre Dame in the state semifinals. So I've been able to follow the Bullets a little bit. Aaron Coons does a great job as head coach there. But I don't think, again, I don't want to sell them short, but IC Catholic is infinitely better.
Yeah. I'm Kyle. I'm guessing you're kind of in the same headspace here.
I mean, we saw what should have been last year, right? I mean, the fact that they gave up 15 points in 4 minutes to Byron to get stunned when they had a 14-0 lead for the majority of the game. Whatever happened to them stalling out, obviously you got to give credit to Coach Boyer and his defense. And the experience that they've had against IC Catholic. I think that was part of the reason why a lot of people gave Byron a fighting chance this week, was just simply because of the experience and him knowing what needs to happen to slow them down. But you take a look at what IC Catholic was last year, and they were a lot of sophomores. I mean, you take a look at Danny Mandela, the quarterback, KJ Parker, the wide receiver. These guys are only juniors, so they're going to be back here again yet next year too.
Yeah.
And you got a lot of that across the board. I mean, they're a junior heavy team with a good mix of seniors, and they have some sophomores coming in. And yeah, the rise of Joey Gliata. I mean, who the hell had heard of him before? I mean, these past 2 weeks, he's just been on fire, man.
Okay, so Kyle, the question becomes, if they win a state championship, does IC Catholic, they get the multiplier? That doesn't guarantee they move up to 4A, right? They'd stay in 3A almost.
It has to be 2 years in a row.
Yep. What Mitch said, it has to be 2 years in a row, so they won't get the success factor, but they've already qualified for the multiplier anyway, because they have the required wins to get multiplied. So right now they're playing on a petition to be in 3A.
That's right.
Next year they'll just have their enrollment plus the multiplier attached.
Okay, there you go.
There's only one team that's getting success factored. SHG.
Yeah. Okay, I did see that. Yeah, you're right. I did see that. So IC Catholic could have played 2A.
Yeah, had they not petitioned up last year, they would have been in 2A this year and last year.
Wow.
Because their enrollment's only 323. So they were actually on the borderline of being Class 1A, actually.
Yeah. Well, we've had that podcast discussion. That was a 30-minute.
If you think that's bad, wait till we talk about Providence Catholic.
Well, Mitch, let's jump into Class 4A.
Let's talk about a 7A championship team here in Providence.
Providence Catholic gets the win over Wheaton St. Francis 17-14. They go up against Sacred Heart Griffin. They win the Leonard Bowl 56-42 against Rochester. Wild. Schuck, did you follow along with this? Did you see the action?
Okay, so the other, because they played Friday night.
Yeah.
Right.
And Quincy University was hosting an NCAA Division II Midwest Regional for women's volleyball. So I'm out covering volleyball, but the whole time I'm on my phone trying to pay attention to the Leonard Bowl. Yeah. And I'm going, okay. And knowing both coaches, for the amount of years I've known both. And okay, so I'm watching, and Rochester's just rolling.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wow,
Yeah.
Derek's going to take out his dad one step short of playing for a state title game. And then here comes SHG. And I'm trying to follow on Twitter, and I couldn't get enough of it. And so, of course, when I got home that night, then I'm trying to look up everything and watch every video highlight, and incredible comeback.
Yeah. Mitch, you were following along. You watched the 8-man state championship game, and then you jumped right into that. I did as well. And as soon as I turned it on, I saw one play, and it was the huge play to tie the game.
Right.
And then I'm sitting downstairs watching with my son, and I'm kind of giving him the backstory, trying to catch him up. And then all of a sudden it's the 4th down, and it's 4th and 1.
Yeah.
And they go for it. And I'm like, my son and I are talking about it like, man, this is a huge play. They just tied the game, and now they're going for this on 4th down, and they bust off this 50-yard run on a 4th and 1 to take the lead. Just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was 35 unanswered what it came out to. So, in this one, it's regardless of what class they're playing in, this is going to be a pretty fun game, right? This is 15 combined state championships. Providence Catholic's got 10. SSG has 5. I'm pretty sure I saw this correctly, that Ken Leonard is sitting on 499 wins. And so if he wins, not only does he get a state championship in his final game, it will also be his 500th win. So I think the stars are aligning pretty well for the Cyclones here. So I'm going to take SHG. They're just so athletic. They're so good. Lost last year to a really good Joliet Catholic team, but I think they get their revenge this year.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, talk about heading off on the perfect farewell. And by the way, did anyone, I know I sent it to Mitch, did you see the Sacred Heart Griffin cheerleaders held up there, the sign that the players run through before the game, and the banner that they ran through said, "Hey, Derek, your dad says it's time to go home." Perfect. Just perfect. Such good stuff. I love it. So that's the 4A state championship. That's 7:00 prime time Friday night. Providence Catholic against Sacred Heart Griffin. And actually, that Providence Catholic team was 5-4 heading into the playoffs, and here they are sitting at 9-4 now, looking for a state title. So moving into Class 5A, this is a really interesting matchup. You have Nazareth Academy, also a 9-4 team, 5-4 heading into the playoffs, and now here they are. They've had a state championship pedigree over the last few years. They're going up against a Peoria High team that, man, we've talked about them over the years.
Yeah.
They're just such a fun team to watch because of their offense. They got the win against, they beat Morris in the semifinals 76-56. Like, they don't care. They're just going to keep scoring on you. And Schuck, have you followed along with Peoria over the years?
I have. And Tim Thornton, the head coach, there's a great dude. Has done such an incredible job of taking that program and elevating it. Again, we talked about Brad Dixon being a guy you'd want next to you in a barroom brawl.
Yes.
Put Tim Thornton on the other side. Nobody's going to mess with you. But you know what? They're so dynamic because they have athletes everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that sets them apart. Not only do they have guys in the backfield and outside who are good, their offensive line and defensive linemen are so incredibly athletic. They are so much fun to watch because of the offense they run and because they just have athletes everywhere.
Yeah. What's really fascinating to me is when you look at this Peoria High program that before Thornton took over, I mean, they struggled year in and year out. They were no more than 4 wins in any season. I think going back 10 years before that, they were not a competitive team. And it was like, all of a sudden he took over, things turned around. And then it was that year they marched to the state championship, their state title. And it was just a great story, right? You just loved to see, like, this head coach comes in and he finds an offense and he builds it around what he's got. And man, their offense has just been incredible.
I'm trying to remember if it's them or if it's Springfield, because they also had a bunch of those.
Well, Springfield beat Rock Island that way, but I know that Peoria High put up a ton of points one year.
Yeah.
The year Peoria Central won the title, they beat Eisenhower in the second round 96-40.
I knew there was a 96-point game in there. Yeah.
The year they won the title, they scored 96 points in the second round, 68 in the quarters, 43 in the semis, and 62 in the championship.
That run was just unbelievable. Yeah.
I will say Quincy Notre Dame now is on an island here because they're an independent.
Yeah.
But for a while there, they were part of the Mid-State Six.
Okay.
Playing the Peoria schools. It was great. Just watching some of the teams they went up against over there was phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mitch, I don't know how much you know about Nazareth, but I know you know their uniforms.
Yeah, great uniforms there. One of my favorites. We'll have that discussion here later.
I was gonna say to anyone listening, we also have a bonus episode this week where Mitch and I make our predictions solely based off uniforms. So that's our UniView state championship preview. That is also available. If you're listening to this, go out and find it on our YouTube channel at View from the West, or you can find it on your regular, podcast stream. But that's our uniform previews. So
yeah, I don't think it'll help them in this game all that much if we predict it, because I think Malachi Washington and the Lions are going to be a little too much for him. But
Yep. Yeah. So that's Nazareth Academy, Peoria High. That's Saturday. That's the 10 a.m. game. Let's look into Class 6A. And this is another matchup.
This will be fun.
Year in and year out. Yes, exactly. Year in and year out. I don't watch the 6A game a whole lot. Once you get into 6, 7, and 8, I'm not always watching those games. But you got Prairie Ridge, 12-1, going up against East St. Louis at 11-2. And obviously, it's 11-2, but it's still East St. Louis. But on the other side, you got an unbelievable, the numbers this kid's putting up for Prairie Ridge. What's his name? Vasey?
Yeah, Tyler Vasey.
Tyler Vasey. Mitch, have you seen his numbers? Do you, at the latest? What's his updated?
Kyle might have him. I think he was over 3,400 yards in the season and probably approaching 50 touchdowns, something like that. It was something absurd.
According to the stats the IHSA has provided, 3,776 yards rushing and 52 touchdowns this season.
Oh my gosh!
As a
Sounds
quarterback,
like 8-man numbers.
Yeah, right. That's.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah. That's 8-man numbers. Oh man, I did see that Steve Soucy's article said he had a rather mundane 171 yards in the win over St. Ignatius. So
What, speaking of that though, did you see how that game ended?
Yes. Okay, it was a field goal.
Yeah.
And that kid, the field goal kicker, had never kicked a field goal in 2 years on the team.
Right.
Yeah. And he wins it.
Last second to beat St. Ignatius. That was crazy.
So yeah, I don't know if they tried to ice the kicker, but can you imagine if you're a kicker, you've never kicked in a game before, and then they ice you? I don't know if they did or not, but either way, incredible. Awesome. So great for Prairie Ridge. Was it East St. Louis and Cary Grove in the 6A game last year? Yes.
Yeah.
And that was maybe one of the best high school football games I've ever seen. It was amazing. You knew how talented East St. Louis was, and to see what Cary Grove was able to pull off was incredible. Kyle, you were watching that one. I think we've talked about that game.
Oh yeah, I love Penn State, Cary Grove.
Yeah.
But I mean, East St. Louis is obviously, they were very talented last year, and I mean, I don't know what it is, but they could not stop the power run of Cary Grove. And you take a look at it this year. I mean, East St. Louis has not lost a game to anybody in the state of Illinois.
No, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Their one loss is to the number 8 ranked team in the country by 7 points.
Yeah.
And then they're on a different level. 130. Yeah, the other loss is the 134th ranked team in the country by 2 points, and they're from Georgia. The other one was from Maryland.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this is, again, it's going to be similar to Cary Grove last year. Perry Ridge is going to have to come in with a game plan similar to what Cary Grove did, and they're just going to have to run the ball, chew up clock, control tempo, and see what happens. And play assignment defense, stay home and do what you're supposed to do. And hopefully something turns out about it. But yeah, East St. Louis is definitely another level. I can't believe that they're ranked number 3 in the state of Illinois, because quite honestly, you'd think they'd be number 1 again, but you got Loyola Academy and Mount Carmel ahead of them. So
yeah.
And both those 2 teams are in state.
Well, I was just going to say, you look at the 7A bracket, you have Chicago Mount Carmel 13-0 going up against Batavia sitting at 10-3. That'll be the matchup at 4:00 on Saturday. Once we get into 7 and 8A, I don't have a whole lot to say. So if anybody knows anything, speak up.
Mount Carmel, coached by NIU legend Jordan Lynch.
Oh, that's right. There you go.
Yeah. So this will be their 19th championship game. They've got 13 titles. Batavia has 2. So this is another game where there's 15 combined state titles. But Mount Carmel beat Loyola Academy in week 9. And they haven't been stopped. So I like Mount Carmel in this one to get title number 14.
We should mention that Batavia beat out Yorkville in the quarterfinals 17-6, and that was the team that knocked out Moline in the second round in that 34-31. Was it 4 overtime game? So
that wasn't York. That was
no, Yorkville. Yeah,
Yorkville. Yeah, Yorkville. There's Yorkville and there's York. Yeah.
Yeah. So Batavia beat Yorkville 17-6.
Gotcha. Okay, I got you.
Yep. So there you go. One last bracket to cover. Lincoln Way East 13-0 going up against Loyola Academy at 12-1. Was it Loyola Academy that took out United Township back in week 2?
Yeah. After playing a team out here in Cincinnati. So I like Loyola Academy here, not knowing anything about either one of these teams. So give me the Ramblers.
Yeah. I want to say Lincoln Way East, I saw a highlight. They had a 4th and 1, or maybe it was 4th and 1. I don't know. Either way, they were on their 1-yard line and they went for it, and it was a 99-yard touchdown. So it was
they went for it on 4th and 1 from their own
I don't know
line?
if it was 4th and 1. I say that, I was trying to remember what they did, but either way, it was a QB sneak or and they busted off for a 99-yard touchdown.
Yeah, they played in the snow in the semifinals. They're pretty cool pictures from that game. I don't remember who they played, but it was a pretty cool environment.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, so that wraps it up. Schuck, any final thoughts here?
I'm just looking forward to the weekend. Just looking forward to state football championships are always a great weekend. A culmination of what we've been talking about for months now.
Yep.
And hoping we get 8 great games. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle, final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Schuck. I mean, I'm definitely excited. I'm ready to get to Champaign. I'm going to be there for all 4 of the first games on Friday. So, really, really interested to see how 1A goes, obviously, for the fact of Lena-Winslow. They're on pace to set some more history milestones if they can come away with the win, both for the state, for the conference, and of course the school itself. So interested to see that. Obviously 2A St. Teresa, Mark Ramsey, this is his 6th trip to state now. He's only had 1 state title, 7th trip. So it'd be cool to see him finally break through, because the last time he won one was back in 1997 when he was at Central A&M. 3A, obviously, IC Catholic, always fun to watch. interested to see how Coach Coons can battle that. I want to see that. I want to see Jake Seaman. Obviously, we've talked about him a couple different times this year. And then 4A, I mean, seeing legendary programs like Pravi and SHG go up against each other. Even though it's 4A and it should be 6A, it's still interesting to see those two meet up. So, really excited for it.
And Mitch, it's a good uniform matchup too. So
it's a great uniform matchup. Yeah. Me again, looking forward to, echoing the comments by you guys, looking forward to the weekend. Obviously our focus is going to be in that first game. So, it'll be great. Another weekend that we're talking about a state championship. You can't beat that. So, I will close my comments on the night by saying thank you to Schuck on your guys' great coverage all year. Fun to follow along with you guys. And obviously with Kyle as well. You've joined us on the show just about every week here, especially in the playoffs with Lee Wynn and everyone else's run. So just kudos to both of you guys for the job that you guys did all season. It's fun to work with you in quotes, or just to be together in this, because this is a lot of fun and you guys enjoy it too. So kudos to you guys on a great year.
To Kyle and to Schuck, to whoever wins the Class 1A state championship, Camp Point Central or Lena-Winslow, one of you will be invited back to talk about the winning team. We'll wait. The
other will be shunned till next year.
And hey, tell DOB that I hope he enjoys the talk about the NICU 9, as he called it.
And he calls it that every single time.
Yeah. Did you catch that, Kyle?
Yeah.
Don O'Brien's got a little dig, and I didn't think you'd appreciate it. So
the NICU 9, huh?
Yeah.
He doesn't know. It's okay. We forgive the ones who don't know.
He's from Galesburg. What do you expect?
And hey, he would have been on the pod, but he's busy watching soccer, right? So
yeah. Well, and now it's basketball season, so he's watching his kid play.
Well, all right. All these
priorities.
Isn't Quincy really good?
Yeah.
Quincy got a chance to be really good in basketball.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that's an off-season pod.
We need like a Quincy Moline, like whenever they play, because that'll be a barn.
And it's right off the bat. It's early.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's at Wharton. So.
Oh man, here we go.
Cool.
That sounds like a future podcast, an off-season podcast here. So, all right. Well, thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you to everyone who listens. And Mitch, we also have some uniform talk out there. So I encourage everyone to go out, find us either on YouTube or just listen to the audio. But obviously, it's a uniform podcast, so we're going to be showing some pictures of uniforms.
We got pictures. They're ready to go.
So you got to listen. You got to watch it on YouTube. So that's the UniView State Championship preview, where we break down every matchup strictly based on the most important factor of the game, and that's what they look like, the uniforms and the helmets. Great. So that's also available. But Mitch, we'll be back. We'll be talking about the recaps of the season and the recaps of the state championship games a week from now. But thank you to you guys for joining us, and to everyone, we will talk soon. That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.